It all started on the morning after our third child, Alice, was born. The air in the hospital room was warm with joy as my wife, Rebecca, cradled Alice in her arms, and our two boys, Liam and Ethan, marveled at their baby sister. It should have been one of the happiest days of my life. And it was, until I spotted the bracelet. It was delicate, golden, and had the initials, JM, engraved on the charm. Rebecca had always been more of a minimalist, preferring simple silver jewelry, but she had been wearing this bracelet for months now. She claimed it was a gift from her old college friend Jessica, whose last name started with M, and I hadn't thought much of it. But as Rebecca shifted Alice in her arms, her sleeve pulled back, and I noticed something I hadn't before. On the back of the charm was a tiny engraving, "Forever yours." My heart skipped a beat. Jessica wasn't the sentimental type, and this inscription seemed intimate. It stuck with me like a splinter as the day went on. That night, when Rebecca fell asleep, I rummaged through her bag for the bracelet. I just needed to look at it more closely. Instead, my fingers brushed against something unexpected, an unfamiliar keycard. It was from a hotel I didn't recognize. My stomach twisted into knots. Rebecca hadn't mentioned staying at a hotel recently, and with Alice's due date, there hadn't been any reason for her to travel. Right? I tried to ignore the pit in my stomach. Maybe there was a simple explanation. But as the keycard and the bracelet weighed on my mind, I realized I couldn't just let it go. That's when I made the decision. Tomorrow, I would find out where that keycard belonged. The next morning, I couldn't shake the tension as I watched Rebecca gently rock Alice back to sleep. Her face was serene, glowing with the satisfaction of motherhood, but the bracelet gleamed on her wrist like a taunt. I kissed her goodbye before heading out, telling her I needed to pick up a few things for the boys. In truth, I was heading straight to the hotel. The keycard bore no identifying details apart from a small logo, a set of 3 intertwined circles. It took a quick internet search to identify it as belonging to the Luna Crest Hotel, a boutique place in the city center, known for its exclusivity. My heart pounded as I approached the polished front desk. "Good morning," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I think my wife may have left this behind during her stay. Could you help me identify the room?" The concierge, a young man with perfectly combed hair, glanced at the keycard and gave a practiced smile. "Of course, sir. Do you have a name?" I hesitated. Giving Rebecca's name felt like crossing a line, but I swallowed hard and said it. He tapped on the computer, frowning slightly as he typed. "There was a reservation under Rebecca's name last month," he said. "Room 507. It was a 2-night stay." My pulse quickened. "I see," I said, feigning nonchalance. "Do you know if anything was left behind?" He gave me a sympathetic look. "I can check with housekeeping, sir. Please wait here." As he disappeared into the back, I stared at the keycard in my hand, my thoughts racing. Rebecca had never mentioned the trip. We were thick in preparation for Alice's arrival, prenatal appointments, setting up the nursery, juggling the boys' school schedules. How could she have been gone for 2 nights without me noticing? The concierge returned, shaking his head. "Nothing was reported, I'm afraid. Is there anything else I can assist you with?" I thanked him and left, my mind a blur. As I sat in my car, staring at the keycard, my thoughts spiraled. Who had she been with? Why hadn't she told me? I scrolled through my phone to check the dates he mentioned, only to remember with a sinking heart, I'd been out of town at a work conference during those exact 2 nights. I didn't go straight home. Instead, I found myself parked in front of my best friend Marcus's house. If anyone could help me make sense of this, it was him. Marcus opened the door, his face lighting up when he saw me, until he noticed my expression. "Man, what's wrong?" he asked. I handed him the keycard without a word. As he turned it over in his hand, his brow furrowed. "Okay," he said slowly, "what am I looking at?" I explained everything, the bracelet, the engraving, the hotel stay. By the time I finished, Marcus looked as troubled as I felt. "Listen," he said, leaning forward, "it might not be what you think. Maybe she just needed some space before the baby came. That's not crazy, right? But why wouldn't she tell me?" I countered. "And who writes 'Forever Yours' on a bracelet?" Marcus didn't have an answer. Instead, he clapped a hand on my shoulder. "You need answers, man. And if Rebecca's not giving them to you, you'll have to find another way." He was right. I couldn't confront her without more to go on. I needed to know the truth before this suspicion consumed me. And so, I made a decision. I was going to find out exactly what Rebecca had been doing in that hotel. That evening, I arrived home with my mind spinning, the keycard still tucked into my pocket like a live wire. Rebecca was in the living room, cradling Alice while the boys played with their action figures on the carpet. It was the perfect domestic scene. Too perfect. "How was your day?" Rebecca asked, glancing up at me with a soft smile. "Busy," I replied, forcing my voice to sound normal. "Picked up a few things for the kids." She nodded, looking content, but I couldn't shake the feeling that she was hiding something enormous. Every glance, every movement, seemed like it could be a clue. Was I just imagining it? After dinner, while Rebecca bathed the kids, I sat in the kitchen, staring at the hotel's website on my laptop. I clicked on the Contact Us page and found the general manager's email address. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. What would I even say? Finally, I typed, "Hello, my wife recently stayed in your hotel and left her keycard behind. Can you confirm if there were any additional charges or items added to the reservation?" It was vague enough not to raise alarms, but I hoped it might prompt some kind of response. I hit send, my heart pounding, and closed the laptop just as Rebecca walked in with Alice in her arms. "You look tired," she said, sitting beside me. "Maybe we should go to bed early tonight." Her touch on my arm was warm, familiar, and yet, it felt different. I smiled weakly, mumbling something about needing to finish some emails. When she finally went to bed, I waited until the house was quiet before opening my laptop again. No response yet from the hotel. But I wasn't done. I had an idea, a risky one. Using a throwaway email account, I signed up for one of those people search sites and ran a reverse lookup on Rebecca's phone number. I knew it was a long shot, but if she had used her number for anything unusual, dating profiles, classified ads, maybe something would pop up. When the results loaded, my stomach lurched. There it was. A listing for a profile on a private, members-only app. The description was vague, but the app seemed to be some kind of exclusive social network for professionals. One line in particular made my skin crawl, "Discretion guaranteed." I stared at the screen, torn between disbelief and rage. Was this really Rebecca's? Or just a coincidence? I needed to know more. The app required an invitation code to join, so I couldn't access it directly. But I could see one detail: the profile had been active within the last week. I didn't sleep much that night. I kept turning over possibilities in my mind, trying to convince myself there was a logical explanation. Maybe it wasn't her profile. Maybe the hotel stay had been innocent. Maybe I was jumping to conclusions. But as the hours ticked by, a darker possibility began to take shape, a possibility I couldn't ignore. What if Rebecca wasn't just hiding something? What if she was someone I didn't truly know? The next morning, the house was bustling with the usual chaos: breakfast spills, missing socks, and Liam and Ethan bickering over who got the blue cereal bowl. Rebecca, as always, moved effortlessly between soothing the baby and wrangling the boys. To anyone watching, she looked like the picture of a devoted wife and mother. But to me, she was a stranger. My phone buzzed in my pocket as I was helping Ethan tie his shoes. I stepped into the hallway to check it. An email from the Luna Crest Hotel. Dear Sir. Thank you for reaching out. After reviewing our records, we confirm that the reservation under Rebecca, last name, was for room 507. No additional charges were made during the stay. Please let us know if there's anything else we can assist you with. No additional charges. That meant no room service, no minibar, no incidentals. The idea that Rebecca could have stayed there for 2 nights without leaving any trace was chilling. I needed more information, something that couldn't be scrubbed away with a simple email. My thoughts were interrupted by Rebecca's voice calling from the kitchen. Are you ready to go, honey? You're going to be late. I'm leaving now, I replied, slipping my phone back into my pocket. I grabbed my keys and bag, feeling the weight of the secrets I was carrying. I didn't go to work. Instead, I drove straight to Marcus's house. Man, you look rough, Marcus said when he opened the door. Did you find anything? I told him about the email from the hotel and the strange app profile. His expression darkened. This is getting weird, dude. If she's lying about the hotel and she's on some sketchy app, you need to figure out what's really going on. I know, I said, my voice tight. I just don't know how. Marcus hesitated, then grabbed his phone. I might have a way. My cousin works IT security for a corporate firm. He's helped me with stuff before, background checks, finding deleted data. He could probably dig into that app profile and see what's going on. I stared at him, unsure whether to feel relieved or terrified. You think he'd help? For you? Yeah. Just say the word. I nodded, the knot in my stomach tightening. Let's do it. That evening, while Rebecca put the kids to bed, I slipped out onto the back porch and called Marcus's cousin, Alex. I explained the situation as vaguely as I could, but he was sharp and caught on quickly. Send me the link to the profile and give me a day or two, Alex said. I can't promise anything, but I'll see what I can find. Thanks, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Hanging up, I stared out into the dark yard, the hum of cicadas filling the silence. For the first time in our 11 years of marriage, I didn't feel like I was coming home to my partner. I felt like I was coming home to a mystery. The next morning, as Rebecca left for the store, I saw an opportunity. After she drove away, I went into the bedroom and opened her closet, searching for anything that might give me a clue. Her suitcase was there, still packed from her hospital stay, but it didn't look disturbed. I sifted through her purses, her nightstand drawer, nothing. Then I spotted it. Tucked into the side pocket of her travel bag was a small, sleek phone I didn't recognize. It was powered off, the screen dark. My heart pounded as I turned it over in my hand. A burner phone. I stared at it, my mind racing. If Rebecca had nothing to hide, why would she need a second phone? Before I could think too much, I turned it on. The lock screen demanded a passcode, and I cursed under my breath. But then I saw it, a notification at the top of the screen. A new message from someone named Jay. Miss you. Can't wait to see you again. The walls of my world were closing in. I shoved the phone back into the bag just as I heard Rebecca's car pull into the driveway. My pulse thundered as I composed myself, plastering on a smile as she walked in with grocery bags. Everything okay? She asked, tilting her head. Yeah, I said, forcing calm into my voice. Just thinking about how lucky I am. She smiled, but I couldn't shake the feeling that her smile was hiding something. Something big. I couldn't stop thinking about the phone. The message from Jay. The fact that Rebecca had been hiding it right under my nose. Every time I looked at her now, I felt like I was seeing a stranger, someone capable of keeping secrets so deep and dark, they could uproot our entire life. That night, I waited until Rebecca fell asleep. I lay beside her, listening to her slow, even breaths, staring at the ceiling and trying to figure out my next move. The burner phone had been a bombshell, but it wasn't enough. I needed to know who J was. What they meant to her. Why she was willing to risk everything to keep them a secret. Around midnight, I carefully slipped out of bed and crept into the closet where the travel bag was stashed. My hands trembled as I pulled out the phone and took it to the kitchen. I powered it on, the glow of the screen illuminating my anxious face. The passcode. I had no idea what it could be, but I started with the obvious, our anniversary. No luck. Her birthday. Nothing. The kids' birthdays. Still nothing. Then it hit me. The bracelet. The initials, JM, could the code be tied to whoever J was? I tried 0715, the date she claimed her college friend Jessica had given her the bracelet. The phone unlocked with a soft click. My breath caught in my throat as the home screen appeared. There were no apps, no photos, just a text message thread with J. I opened it, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might wake Rebecca in the next room. The messages were mundane at first. A lot of can't wait to see you and thinking of you. But as I scrolled back, they grew more intense. More personal. It became clear that this wasn't some casual acquaintance. This was a relationship. An affair. One message stood out, room 507 is booked. Same place, same time. Can't stop thinking about last time. Room 507. The Luna Crest Hotel. It was all falling into place, and yet the truth felt surreal. Like I was reading someone else's nightmare. I scrolled further back, my curiosity battling my dread. Then I found it, a picture. It was of Rebecca, sitting on the edge of a hotel bed, wearing the same black dress she'd worn to a work function a few months ago. Her smile was soft, almost shy. And behind her, in the reflection of the mirror, was a man I didn't recognize. I slammed the phone down on the counter, fighting the wave of nausea that hit me. Whoever J was, he wasn't just a fling. He was something more. Someone she cared about enough to risk destroying our family. I took a deep breath, trying to think rationally. Confronting her now wouldn't work. Not yet. I needed more, something definitive. My mind flashed to Alex, Marcus's cousin, and the work he was doing. Maybe he'd uncovered more by now. I sent Alex a quick message, call me when you get a chance. It's urgent. The phone vibrated almost immediately with his reply, I've got something. Can we meet tomorrow? Relief and dread hit me simultaneously. I tucked the burner phone back into the bag and returned to bed, lying awake for hours, replaying everything I'd just seen. The texts. The photo. The betrayal. When Rebecca stirred in her sleep and turned toward me, her arm draping over my chest, I froze. For the first time in 11 years, her touch didn't feel comforting. It felt like a lie. The next morning, I left the house earlier than usual, telling Rebecca I had some errands to run before work. She kissed me goodbye, her lips brushing against my cheek with the same warmth as always. It was almost enough to make me doubt myself. Almost. I met Alex at a quiet coffee shop on the other side of town. He was already seated in a corner booth, his laptop open in front of him. When I slid into the seat across from him, he gave me a nod and flipped the screen around so I could see. This is what I've got so far, he said, gesturing to the laptop. The profile you sent me is tied to a private app called Enclave. It's mostly used by professionals for networking, but it has a reputation for being, let's say, less than professional behind closed doors. I leaned in, squinting at the screen. What do you mean? Encrypted chats, private event invites, discreet meetups, it's all there, Alex said. Your wife's profile is real. She's been active for months. Most of her interactions are with one user, JM. I was able to trace his profile back to a guy named James Mercer. Ring any bells? I shook my head, my stomach sinking. No. Who is he? Alex tapped a few keys, pulling up a grainy photo of a man with dark hair and sharp features. Looks like he's a corporate consultant. Travels a lot. Based in the same city as the hotel where your wife stayed. I stared at the photo, my pulse thudding in my ears. James Mercer. JM. The initials on the bracelet. The man in the mirror from the photo on her phone. It was him. She's been meeting him for months, Alex continued, his voice low. There are payment records showing he sent her money through the app. Gifts, too. Expensive ones. Like a bracelet, I muttered bitterly. Alex nodded. Exactly. The enormity of it hit me like a freight train. Rebecca hadn't just been cheating. She'd been living a double life. And James Mercer wasn't some casual fling, he was funding it. What do I do with this? I asked, my voice hollow. That's up to you, Alex said. You've got enough here to confront her. Or, if you're planning to take legal action, this is pretty solid evidence. I nodded, feeling like I was on autopilot. Thanks, Alex. I owe you. He gave me a sympathetic look as he closed his laptop. Take care of yourself, man. This stuff can mess with your head. I left the coffee shop in a daze, the weight of everything I'd learned pressing down on me. James Mercer. Room 507. The burner phone. It all added up, but I wasn't sure how to confront Rebecca without falling apart. That night, I went home determined to keep up appearances. I helped Liam with his math homework, read a bedtime story to Ethan, and even rocked Alice to sleep when she got fussy. Rebecca watched me with a soft smile, her eyes filled with what looked like love. It almost made me angry. Long day? She asked as we crawled into bed. Yeah, I said, turning off the bedside lamp. Just tired. I lay there in the dark, listening to her breathing as it slowed and deepened. My mind raced with possibilities. Should I confront her now? Should I wait and gather more evidence? Or should I just walk away without saying a word? But as I stared at the ceiling, one thought kept running through my mind, who else knows? The next morning, my resolve hardened. I couldn't keep living like this, pretending everything was fine while suspicion and betrayal ate away at me. I decided I needed answers, definitive ones. But I wasn't ready to confront Rebecca yet. Not without knowing the full extent of the truth. I called Marcus on my way to work. I need another favor, I said, keeping my voice low. Name it, Marcus replied, without hesitation. I need to know if James Mercer has any connection to Rebecca outside of the app. Like if they've met somewhere, exchanged more than messages. Anything. Marcus hesitated. You sure you want to go down this road, man? This could get messy. It's already messy, I said flatly. I need to know. All right, he said. Give me a day or two. I thanked him and hung up, gripping the steering wheel tightly as I navigated the familiar streets to my office. My mind kept replaying the details Alex had uncovered, and the pieces were slowly falling into place. Rebecca's increasing detachment, the secret hotel stay, the burner phone, the bracelet, it all pointed to one conclusion. But knowing wasn't enough. I needed undeniable proof. That evening, I returned home to find Rebecca in the kitchen, humming softly as she prepared dinner. She looked up when I walked in, her face lighting up with a smile. Hey, she said. You're home early. Yeah, I replied, forcing a casual tone. Thought I'd spend some extra time with the kids. She smiled again, but I couldn't help noticing the tension in her shoulders as she turned back to the stove. Was she nervous? Or was I imagining it? After dinner, as Rebecca tucked the kids into bed, I found myself drawn back to the burner phone. I knew it was risky, but I couldn't resist. While she was upstairs, I retrieved the phone from her travel bag and powered it on. Another message from Jay had come in, can't wait to see you Friday. Same place, same time. Friday. Room 507. My breath hitched. It was happening again, another meeting. And now I had a timeline. I quickly powered off the phone and put it back before Rebecca came downstairs. Later that night, as we lay in bed, I asked her casually, "Got any plans this weekend?" She hesitated for just a moment, a fraction of a second, but it was enough. "Not really," she said. "Just catching up on things around the house." I nodded, my stomach churning. She was lying to me. Again. The next day, Marcus called with an update. "You were right," he said. "Mercer's been in town more than once over the past few months. He's booked rooms at the Luna Crest on 3 separate occasions. All during times when you were out of town." My chest tightened. Did he use his real name? "Nope," Marcus said. "Used a pseudonym every time. But the payment method matches his name." "And Rebecca?" "There's no direct evidence tying her to him at the hotel," Marcus admitted. "But given what you already know, it's not hard to connect the dots." I thanked him and hung up, feeling the ground shift beneath me. It wasn't just suspicion anymore. It was reality. Friday came faster than I expected. That evening, Rebecca kissed me goodbye, claiming she was meeting an old friend for dinner. I watched her drive away, my heart pounding as I made my decision. I grabbed my car keys and followed her at a safe distance, my palms slick with sweat. She drove straight to the Luna Crest Hotel. Parking a few spaces away, I watched as she stepped out of her car, smoothed her dress, and walked inside. I waited a few minutes before following her in, my pulse racing as I approached the front desk. "Can I help you, sir?" the receptionist asked, her tone polite. "Yes," I said, forcing a smile. "I'm here to surprise my wife. She's in room 507. The receptionist hesitated, glancing at her computer screen. "I'm sorry, sir, but I can't confirm who's in that room." "I understand," I said smoothly, slipping a $50 bill across the counter. "But it's our anniversary, and I really want to make it special." She hesitated, then nodded. "Room 507. 5th floor." I took the elevator up, my heart hammering in my chest. When I reached the door, I hesitated. This was it. Whatever I found on the other side would change everything. Taking a deep breath, I knocked. The moment I knocked, my heart felt like it might burst out of my chest. Seconds stretched into what felt like hours before the door opened. It wasn't Rebecca who greeted me. Instead, a man stood there, tall, dark-haired, sharply dressed. James Mercer. I recognized him instantly from the photo Alex had shown me. His confident smirk faltered as his eyes met mine. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice calm but wary. I forced myself to remain steady, though every fiber of my being wanted to throw a punch. "Yeah," I said, stepping forward into the doorway. "I'm looking for my wife." His face gave nothing away, but the tension in his posture was undeniable. Before he could respond, I heard her voice from inside the room. "Who is it?" Rebecca called, her tone light and carefree. It felt like a dagger to the heart. I pushed past James without waiting for an invitation. Rebecca was standing by the bed, her back to me, scrolling through her phone. She froze when she saw me in the reflection of the mirror. Slowly, she turned, her face pale as if she'd seen a ghost. "Luke," she whispered, her voice barely audible. I looked between the two of them, James, who stood stiffly by the door, and Rebecca, whose face was a portrait of guilt. The room was eerily quiet, save for the hum of the air conditioner. My chest tightened as I fought to keep my composure. "So," I said, my voice trembling. "This is where you've been sneaking off to." Rebecca took a step toward me, her hands raised as if to calm me. "Luke, I can explain." "Explain what?" I snapped, my voice rising. That you've been meeting this guy behind my back. That you've been lying to me, to our kids, for who knows how long." She flinched at the word, kids, her face crumpling. "It's not what you think," she said weakly. James cleared his throat, drawing my attention. "Maybe we should take this conversation somewhere else," he suggested, his voice annoyingly measured. "Shut up," I barked, turning on him. "You don't get to say a word." He raised his hands in mock surrender, taking a step back. "Fair enough." I turned back to Rebecca, my anger giving way to hurt. "How could you do this?" I asked, my voice breaking. "After everything we've been through, everything we've built, how could you throw it all away for him?" Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't answer. She didn't even try. And that silence said more than any excuse ever could. I nodded slowly, the weight of her betrayal settling in my chest like a stone. "I hope it was worth it," I said quietly. Then I turned and walked out of the room. James didn't try to stop me. Rebecca didn't call after me. The sound of the door clicking shut behind me felt final, like the end of a chapter one never wanted to close. In the elevator, my legs felt weak, and my breath came in short, shallow bursts. I had come for answers, and I had gotten them, but they didn't bring me peace. They brought devastation. When I got to my car, I sat there for a long time, gripping the steering wheel, trying to process everything. My life, my marriage, my family, it was all a lie. And now, I had to decide what to do next. The drive home was a blur. My hands gripped the wheel tightly, and my thoughts spiraled as I replayed the scene in room 507. Rebecca's face, James's arrogant calm, it all felt like a cruel, surreal dream I couldn't wake up from. When I got home, the house was quiet. The babysitter had already put the kids to bed, and she left as soon as I paid her. I stood in the living room, staring at the framed photos on the wall, our wedding day, the boys' birthdays, Rebecca holding Alice for the first time. It was like looking at someone else's life. I sank onto the couch, burying my face in my hands. The anger had burned away, leaving only exhaustion and sadness. What was I supposed to do now? Confronting Rebecca had given me no closure, only more questions. Questions I wasn't sure I wanted answered. I thought about the kids, about Liam and Ethan, who adored their mother, and about Alice, who was still so small, so unaware of the cracks forming in our family. I knew whatever I decided would affect them more than anyone. My phone buzzed, pulling me out of my thoughts. It was Marcus. "How'd it go?" he asked cautiously. I hesitated, then told him everything. The hotel. James Mercer. Rebecca's silence. By the time I finished, Marcus was quiet on the other end of the line. "Man, I'm so sorry," he finally said. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me wants to throw her out and never look back. But the kids, they complicate everything." "You need to think this through," Marcus said gently. "Don't make any decisions tonight. Give yourself some time." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "Yeah. You're right." After we hung up, I stared at the burner phone still in my pocket. I couldn't bring myself to look at it again, but I couldn't let it go, either. It felt like a symbol of everything that had gone wrong. Hours passed, and I stayed on the couch, unable to sleep. Around midnight, I heard the garage door open. A moment later, Rebecca stepped inside, her heels clicking softly on the tile floor. She froze when she saw me sitting there. "Luke," she said hesitantly. "You're still up?" "Yeah," I said flatly. "Figured we should talk." She set her purse down, her movements slow and deliberate, like she was bracing herself. "About earlier." "Don't," I interrupted. "I don't want to hear any excuses." "I wasn't going to make excuses," she said quietly. I wanted to tell you the truth." I leaned back, crossing my arms. "The truth?" now you want to tell me the truth. Go ahead, Rebecca. I'm listening. She hesitated, then sat down on the armchair across from me. For a moment, she just stared at her hands, twisting her wedding ring nervously. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. I didn't mean for it to happen, she said. When it started, I thought it was just, I don't know, a distraction. Something harmless. But it got out of control. I clenched my jaw, biting back the urge to yell. How long? A year, she admitted, her voice breaking. Maybe a little more. A year. 12 months of lies. 12 months of betrayal. The weight of it threatened to crush me, but I forced myself to stay calm. And the kids? I asked. Do they know anything? No, she said quickly. I swear, I never let it affect them. They don't know anything. I shook my head, disbelief and anger simmering just beneath the surface. You let it affect everything, Rebecca. You let it destroy our marriage. Tears streamed down her face, but I felt nothing. No sympathy. No pity. Just a cold, hollow ache. I'm sorry, she whispered. I know I've ruined everything, but I still love you, Luke. I never stopped loving you. Her words felt like an insult, and I stood abruptly, unable to sit still any longer. You have a funny way of showing it, I said bitterly. If you loved me, you wouldn't have done this. She didn't respond, and the silence between us grew heavier with every passing second. I can't do this right now, I said finally. I need time to think. Without waiting for her response, I grabbed my keys and walked out the door. I didn't know where I was going, I just needed to get away. I drove aimlessly for over an hour, the empty streets illuminated by pale streetlights. My thoughts bounced between anger, sorrow, and confusion. I felt like I was free-falling, with no idea what might catch me, or if anything even could. Eventually, I found myself parked outside Marcus's house. It was past midnight, but his porch light was still on. I texted him instead of ringing the bell. You up? A moment later, the door opened. Marcus stood there in sweatpants and a t-shirt, his face etched with concern. Come in, man, he said, stepping aside. Inside, he handed me a beer and waited for me to speak. The words spilled out before I could stop them, the confrontation, Rebecca's confession, her insistence that she still loved me. By the time I finished, I felt as raw as if I'd been scraped clean from the inside. Marcus leaned back in his chair, letting out a low whistle. That's heavy, he said. I'm sorry, Luke. I don't even know what to say. I don't either, I admitted. I mean, how do you come back from something like this? Can you even come back? Marcus was quiet for a moment, then leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. Look, man. I know you're hurting right now, and it feels like your whole world's caving in. But you've got to ask yourself one question, what do you want? I stared at him, unsure how to answer. I don't know. Do you want to try to fix things? Or do you want out, he pressed. Because whichever path you choose, you've got to commit to it. You can't stay stuck in the middle. His words stayed with me as I drove home in the early hours of the morning. The house was dark and silent when I walked in. I found Rebecca on the couch, clutching a pillow to her chest, her face streaked with dried tears. For a moment, I just stood there, looking at the woman I'd spent over a decade building a life with. The woman I thought I knew. When she stirred and saw me, she sat up quickly, wiping at her face. Luke, I don't want to hear it, I said, holding up a hand. I need to say something. She nodded, her eyes wide with apprehension. This is bigger than just you and me, I began. We have 3 kids. They deserve parents who aren't at each other's throats, who can give them a stable home. But I don't know if I can forgive you for what you've done. Not yet. Her face crumpled, but she didn't speak. "I'll stay," I continued, my voice steady, "but only for the kids. For now. We'll take this one day at a time. And we'll go to counseling, together and separately. If you're serious about making this right, you'll put in the work." "I will," she said quickly, her voice trembling. "I'll do whatever it takes." I nodded, though I wasn't sure I believed her. "But if I ever get the sense that you're not trying, or that you're still in contact with him, I'm gone. No second chances." "I understand," she whispered. We sat in silence for a while, the weight of the situation settling between us like an uninvited guest. I didn't know if I'd made the right decision or if I was just delaying the inevitable. But for now, it was the only choice I could live with. Over the next few weeks, we began the painstaking process of picking up the pieces. Counseling sessions were brutal, forcing us to confront the cracks in our relationship that had gone unnoticed for years. Rebecca cut off all contact with James Mercer, or so she claimed, and focused on rebuilding my trust. I tried to be present for the kids, hiding the pain that lingered beneath the surface. Some days, I felt like I was making progress. Other days, I wondered if I was a fool for staying. But one thing was clear, no matter what happened, I wasn't the same man I was before. And our marriage would never be the same either. Whether we would survive it, or if I even wanted to, was still a question I didn't have the answer to.